There comes a moment in every man's life when he must stop asking, stop proving, stop chasing, and start paying attention. Because the truth is, not every person who enters your life is meant to stay. Not every connection is meant to grow. And not every woman who enjoys your attention actually values your presence. Too many men waste months, sometimes years, trying to win over someone who has already shown them exactly where they stand. They keep sending messages, they keep initiating conversations, they keep making sacrifices nobody asks them to make. They tell themselves that if they are patient enough, loving enough, understanding enough, eventually she will realize their worth. But life does not work that way. The people who truly value you do not need to be convinced of your value every single day. The people who genuinely care about you do not make you fight for basic respect. And the people who want to be in your life do not leave you constantly questioning whether you matter to them. The hardest lesson many men learn is that effort cannot create interest where interest does not exist. No amount of chasing can make someone appreciate what they have already decided to overlook. So, if she keeps doing these 5 things, stop chasing her and walk away. The first thing is this: she only talks to you when it benefits her. Pay attention to the pattern. Whenever she needs attention, she appears. Whenever she feels lonely, she texts you. Whenever she needs emotional support, advice, validation, or help, suddenly you become important. But the moment her needs are satisfied, she disappears again. You find yourself carrying every conversation. You find yourself checking in first. You find yourself investing more and more while receiving less and less. That is not connection. That is convenience. A woman who values you does not only reach out when she needs something. She reaches out because she enjoys your presence. She wants to know how your day went. She cares about your thoughts. She makes room for you in her life, even when she does not need anything from you. When someone treats you like an option during their good days and a necessity during their bad days, you are not being appreciated. You are being used, and the longer you tolerate it, the more normal it becomes. Never confuse access with affection. Just because someone talks to you does not mean they value you. Just because someone keeps you around does not mean they care. Sometimes people keep certain individuals close because they enjoy the benefits, not because they appreciate the person. Now, the second thing is this: she constantly disrespects your time. Time is one of the most valuable things a human being possesses. You can earn more money. You can replace possessions. But once time is gone, it never returns. When someone repeatedly cancels plans without reason, ignores commitments, disappears for days without explanation, and expects you to wait indefinitely, they are sending a message. The message is simple: your time is not important to them. Many men make excuses for this behavior. Maybe she's busy, maybe she is confused, maybe she is stressed. And yes, life gets busy. Everyone has responsibilities. Everyone experiences difficult periods, but people make time for what matters to them. The issue is not occasional delays or genuine life circumstances. The issue is consistent disregard. When somebody respects you, they respect your time. They communicate. They keep their word. They make an effort. Respect is not expressed through promises. It is expressed through behavior. If she repeatedly your time as something disposable, stop convincing yourself that things will magically change. People reveal their priorities through their actions far more clearly than through their words. The third thing is this: she makes you feel like you are never enough. No matter what you do, it never seems sufficient. You support her, but she focuses on what you missed. You listen to her, but she highlights what you did wrong. You show up for her, but she acts as if your effort is expected rather than appreciated. Gradually, you begin questioning yourself. You start wondering if you need to become more successful, more attractive, more confident, more entertaining, more understanding. You keep moving the finish line because she keeps moving the finish line. And before long, your self-worth becomes tied to someone else's approval. That is a dangerous place to live. A healthy relationship inspires growth without destroying confidence. A healthy connection encourages improvement without making someone feel inadequate. The right woman will challenge you to become better while still appreciating who you are today. But when someone constantly makes you feel like you must earn basic acceptance, you are chasing validation rather than building a relationship. You should never have to become someone else just to receive the respect every human being deserves. The fourth thing is this: she enjoys your pursuit more than your presence. This one is difficult because many men mistake it for attraction. She seems interested when you are mulling away. She responds when you stop texting. She becomes curious when you focus on yourself. But the moment you give her consistent attention again, the interest disappears. Why? Because some people enjoy being pursued more than they enjoy building something meaningful. They love the attention. They love the validation. They love knowing someone wants them. But they do not actually want the responsibility of a real connection. So they keep the door slightly open, not enough to let you in, just enough to keep you standing outside. This creates a cycle. You chase, she responds, you get hopeful, she withdraws. You chase harder, and the cycle repeats. Months pass, sometimes years pass. Nothing changes because the relationship was never moving forward. It was simply moving in circles. A person who genuinely wants you does not leave you trapped in endless uncertainty. They do not keep you guessing forever. They do not make commitment feel like an impossible reward that can only be earned through endless effort. When interest is real, clarity eventually follows. When confusion becomes permanent, that confusion is often the answer. The fifth thing is this: she repeatedly shows you who she is, but you keep believing who you want her to be. This is perhaps the most painful mistake of all. Many men do not fall in love with reality. They fall in love with potential. They fall in love with possibilities. They fall in love with who they imagine someone could become. They see moments of kindness and ignore patterns of disrespect. They hear promises and ignore actions. They focus on rare good days while overlooking countless bad ones. And because of that, they remain stuck. One of the strongest things a man can do is accept reality exactly as it is. Not as he hopes it will be, not as he wishes it would become, not as it looked 6 months ago, but exactly as it is today. When someone's actions consistently hurt you, disappoint you, confuse you, and drain your peace, believe the pattern. Do not spend years waiting for someone to become the person they have never shown themselves to be. You cannot build a future on potential alone. You must build it on reality. The truth is that walking away is not weakness. Walking away requires strength. Chasing is often easier because chasing allows you to avoid acceptance. Chasing allows you to keep believing that one more effort will finally change everything. Walking away requires you to face reality. It requires you to accept that not every story gets the ending you wanted. It requires you to choose self-respect over temporary comfort. And that choice is never easy. But there is something powerful that happens when a man stops chasing people who do not value him. His energy returns, his confidence returns, his focus returns. The attention that was once spent trying to convince someone else of his worth becomes invested in building his own life. He stops begging for appreciation and starts becoming the kind of man who naturally attracts respect. He stops running after validation and starts creating purpose. He stops looking for someone to complete him and starts completing himself. And that is when everything changes. Because the moment you stop chasing what continually runs away from you, you create space for what genuinely belongs in your life. The right people do not require endless pursuit. The right people do not make you abandon your dignity. The right people do not force you to sacrifice your peace just to keep them around. If she keeps doing these 5 things, stop chasing her and walk away. Not because you are angry, not because you want revenge, not because you are trying to prove a point. Walk away because your time matters. Walk away because your peace matters. Walk away because your self-respect matters. And most importantly, walk away because the life you are meant to build is far too valuable to spend it running after someone who keeps showing you that they are willing to live without you. The moment you begin to understand your own value, something interesting happens. You stop seeing rejection as a sign that there is something wrong with you. You start seeing it as information. You start seeing it as clarity. You realize that not every door that closes is a tragedy. Sometimes it is protection. Sometimes it is life redirecting you away from something that would have drained you for years. Too many men spend their lives trying to earn love from people who have no intention of giving it. They wake up every day carrying emotional burdens that were never theirs to carry. They blame themselves for someone else's lack of effort. They criticize themselves for someone else's inconsistency. They wonder what they need to fix when the real problem was never their value. The real problem was their willingness to stay where they were not valued. There is a difference between fighting for a relationship and fighting for someone's attention. One builds a future, the other destroys your self-respect. A relationship worth having requires effort from both sides. It requires communication from both sides. It requires commitment from both sides. It requires care from both sides. The moment one person becomes responsible for carrying everything, the connection begins to collapse. You cannot be the only one making sacrifices. You cannot be the only one initiating. You cannot be the only one apologizing. You cannot be the only one trying. The human spirit was never designed to survive on crumbs of affection. Eventually, exhaustion arrives. Eventually, frustration arrives. Eventually, disappointment arrives. And the saddest part is that many men reach that point after investing years of their lives, years they can never get back, years spent waiting for a text message, years spent analyzing mixed signals, years spent hoping for consistency from someone who had been inconsistent from the very beginning. When people tell you to follow your heart, they often forget to mention that your heart must be guided by wisdom, because your heart can become attached to someone who is wrong for you. Your heart can become addicted to possibilities. Your heart can become trapped inside fantasies that reality never supports. That is why maturity requires balance. Feel deeply, but observe carefully. Care deeply, but pay attention. Love deeply, but never ignore reality. Reality is always speaking. The question is whether you are willing to listen. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that love should feel like constant struggle. They romanticize suffering. They glorify emotional chaos. They convince themselves that if something hurts enough, it must be meaningful. But pain is not proof of love. Confusion is not proof of love. Anxiety is not proof of love. Constant uncertainty is not proof of love. Sometimes those feelings are simply warning signs. Sometimes they are indicators that something is wrong. Think about the relationships in your life where you feel respected. Think about the friendships that bring peace into your life. Think about the family members who genuinely care about you. You do not spend every day wondering where you stand with them. You do not spend every day questioning their intentions. You do not spend every day feeling emotionally exhausted. There is clarity, there is consistency, there is effort. And those same qualities should exist in your romantic relationships as well. Too often, people accept behavior in dating that they would never accept from anyone else. They tolerate disrespect because attraction is involved. They tolerate neglect because emotions are involved. They tolerate disappointment because hope is involved. But hope without evidence becomes self-deception. At some point, you must stop asking what someone says and start looking at what someone does. Zakos reveal priorities. Zakos reveal intentions. Zakos reveal truth. Words can be manufactured, promises can be made, excuses can be repeated, but actions are difficult to fake consistently. That is why paying attention to behavior is so important. Behavior is honesty in motion. When someone continuously shows up for you, that means something. When someone continuously makes excuses, that means something too. Many men fear walking away because they think it means losing. They think leaving means failure. They think letting go means giving up. But sometimes walking away is the first real victory. Because what are you actually losing? Someone who rarely prioritizes you? Someone who repeatedly disrespects your time? Someone who creates confusion instead of clarity? Someone who takes your energy without adding value to your life? The fear of loss often keeps people trapped in situations that are already hurting them. They become afraid of being alone. They become afraid of starting over. They become afraid of uncertainty. But there is something far worse than being alone. Being with someone who makes you feel alone. There is something far worse than starting over. Spending years moving nowhere. There is something far worse than uncertainty. Knowing deep down that someone does not value you, but refusing to accept it. The strongest individuals are not the ones who can hold on to everything. The strongest individuals are the ones who know when it is time to let go. Letting go requires courage, because it forces you to face temporary discomfort. It forces you to endure loneliness. It forces you to sit with disappointment. It forces you to grieve expectations that never became reality. But growth often begins where comfort ends. Every major transformation in life requires releasing something. Sometimes it is a habit. Sometimes it is a mindset. Sometimes it is a relationship. And sometimes it is the version of yourself that keeps settling for less than you deserve. Imagine what would happen if all the energy you spent chasing unavailable people was redirected towards your own growth. Imagine if every hour spent worrying became an hour spent building. Imagine if every ounce of emotional energy spent seeking validation became energy invested in your goals. Your life would change, your confidence would grow, your opportunities would expand, your future would become larger than your past. This is one of the reasons why self-respect is so powerful. Self-respect changes your standards. It changes what you tolerate. It changes what you accept. It changes how you respond to disappointment. A man with low self-respect sees rejection and immediately questions his worth. A man with self-respect sees rejection and evaluates compatibility. One assumes he is not enough. The other understands that not every connection is meant to work. That difference changes everything because confidence is not believing that everyone will choose you. Confidence is knowing that you will be okay even when they do not. Confidence is not demanding approval. Confidence is not seeking validation. Confidence is trusting your own value regardless of external outcomes. And that type of confidence becomes incredibly attractive. Not because it impresses others, but because it protects you from accepting less than you deserve. The truth is that many people do not recognize your value until you stop giving them unlimited access to it. As long as you remain available, no matter how poorly you are treated, there is little incentive for change. As long as you continue showing up, regardless of how little effort is returned, the imbalance continues. Boundaries teach people how to treat you. Boundaries communicate standards. Boundaries communicate self-worth. And sometimes the most powerful boundary is simply walking away. No argument, no dramatic speech, no desperate attempt to be understood. Just a quiet decision to stop participating in a dynamic that no longer serves you. There is tremendous strength in silence when it comes from self-respect. Not the silence of resentment, not the silence of manipulation, the silence of acceptance. The silence that says, I see reality clearly now. The silence that says, I no longer need to convince you. The silence that says, I choose peace over pursuit. Many people spend years trying to change someone else's mind, but you cannot negotiate genuine desire. You cannot persuade someone into valuing you. You cannot force appreciation. The right people recognize your value without endless persuasion. The right people appreciate your presence without constant reminders. The right people do not require you to perform for basic respect. When you understand this, relationships become simpler. Not easier, but simpler. You stop chasing, you stop forcing, you stop proving, you stop exhausting yourself. And instead, you start observing. You watch what people do. You pay attention to patterns. You listen to actions. You trust consistency. You trust reality. And reality has a way of freeing you from illusions. Some people enter your life for a season. Some people enter your life for a lesson. Some people enter your life to reveal strengths you did not know you possessed. Not every connection is meant to become permanent. Not every attraction is meant to become a relationship. Not every person who captures your attention deserves access to your future. Acceptance of this truth creates freedom. Because once you stop trying to every connection lasts forever, you become more selective about where you invest your energy. You begin protecting your peace. You begin protecting your time. You begin protecting your emotional well-being. And those protections are not selfish. They are necessary. The world will always contain people who appreciate what you offer and people who do not. Your responsibility is not to convince everyone of your value. Your responsibility is to recognize where your value is appreciated. That requires patience. That requires wisdom. That requires discipline. Most importantly, it requires the courage to walk away when necessary. Not every goodbye is a loss. Not every ending is a failure. Sometimes an ending is simply the beginning of a better chapter that could not arrive until you release the old one. The problem is that many people remain so focused on what they are losing that they never notice what they are gaining. They gain peace, they gain clarity, they gain confidence, they gain freedom, they gain time. They gain opportunities they never would have discovered otherwise. And slowly they begin rebuilding themselves. Not for someone else, not to prove a point, not to win anyone back, but because they finally understand that their life is bigger than one person's opinion of them. Their future is bigger than one relationship. Their worth is bigger than one rejection. And once that realization takes root, everything starts to shift. The desperation disappears. The anxiety begins to fade. The need for constant validation weakens. And in its place comes something much stronger, a quiet certainty, a quiet confidence, a quiet understanding that your value was never determined by who stayed and who left. Your value was always there. The only thing that changed was your willingness to recognize it. The moment you truly recognize that, you stop living your life from a position of scarcity. You stop believing that this one person is your only chance at happiness. You stop acting as though losing one relationship means losing your future. Because the truth is, No single person has the power to define your destiny unless you hand them that power. Far too many men hand over control of their emotional well-being without realizing it. Their mood depends on whether she texts back. Their confidence depends on whether she shows interest. Their peace depends on whether she gives attention. Their happiness depends on whether she chooses them. And slowly, without noticing, they become prisoners of someone else's decisions. That is not love. That is dependence. Real strength begins when you reclaim ownership of your emotional state, when you wake up focused on your mission instead of someone's approval, when you invest in your future instead of obsessing over someone's mixed signals, when your self-worth comes from your character, your actions, and your purpose rather than another person's validation. Because here's what many people never realize. The more desperately you chase approval, the less valuable you feel. And the less valuable you feel, the more approval you seek. It becomes a cycle that feeds itself, a dangerous cycle, one that leaves people emotionally exhausted and spiritually drained. But when you begin building your own life, something changes. You no longer need constant reassurance. You no longer need someone else's attention to feel complete. You no longer panic when someone becomes distant because your identity is rooted in something deeper. You understand that your purpose existed before they arrived, and it will continue long after they leave. That mindset changes the way you approach relationships. Instead of asking, "How do I make her stay?" you begin asking, "Is this relationship adding value to my life?" Instead of asking, "What do I need to change so she'll choose me?" you begin asking, "Does this person deserve access to my time, energy, and commitment?" Those are powerful questions because they shift your focus away from earning someone's affection and toward evaluating someone's character. And that is exactly what mature relationships require. Evaluation, observation, awareness. Not blind pursuit, not emotional desperation, not endless sacrifice. One of the greatest signs of maturity is understanding that attraction alone is not enough. Someone can be attractive and still be wrong for you. Someone can be charming and still be unhealthy for you. Someone can make your heart race and still bring chaos into your life. Chemistry is important, but chemistry without compatibility creates suffering. Chemistry without respect creates frustration. Chemistry without consistency creates confusion. And confusion has become one of the biggest traps in modern relationships. People spend months trying to decode messages, trying to interpret signals, trying to understand behavior that should not require interpretation. When someone genuinely wants to be part of your life, you should not need a detective to figure it out. You should not need endless analysis. You should not need constant guessing. Their effort should speak, their actions should speak, their consistency should speak. The healthiest relationships are often the least confusing ones, not because they are perfect, but because both people are making their intentions clear. When effort flows both ways, there is less uncertainty. When respect flows both ways, there is less anxiety. When commitment flows both ways, there is less fear. Unfortunately, many men stay attached to situations that provide none of those things. They become emotionally invested in potential. They become emotionally invested in memories. They become emotionally invested in who someone used to be. And because of that, they struggle to accept who that person is today. But your future cannot be built on yesterday's version of someone. Your future must be built on reality. This is why honesty with yourself is so important. Ask yourself difficult questions. Are you holding on to who she is or who you wish she was? Are you staying because the relationship is healthy or because you're afraid of letting go? Are you receiving genuine effort or are you surviving on occasional moments of attention? Those questions can be uncomfortable, but growth often begins with uncomfortable truths. There comes a point where every man must decide what kind of life he wants to live. A life spent chasing or a life spent building, because those paths lead to very different destinations. The man who spends his years chasing often neglects himself. He neglects his goals. He neglects his health. He neglects his ambitions. He becomes so focused on being chosen that he forgets to become the best version of himself. Meanwhile, the man who focuses on building develops something powerful. He develops purpose. He develops discipline. He develops confidence. He develops direction. And as he grows, he discovers something surprising. The people who